Sadguru Nam Maharaj Ki Jai. 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 Om. Whoo. So I'm brought back to a moment sitting inside of an airplane. We're flying at cruising altitude, probably somewhere around 35,000 feet above the ground. I've got my Bose noise-canceling headphones on, listening to some sort of lovely Sanskrit chant. We're in a plane that has 3 seats on one side of the center aisle and 3 seats on the other side. We're on the right side, and I'm in the aisle seat, and Alan is to my right in the middle seat. It's probably about the year 2000, 2001, somewhere in that range would be my guess. So Alan is somewhere in the range of, 15, 16, somewhere in that range, maybe 17. And my eyes are closed. We've been flying for quite some time. We're en route to the ashram. All of a sudden, I can feel Alan's hand petting my forearm. It was a very sentimental moment for me because it's something he used to do when he was very little. When we would be sitting together, he would pet my arm, the hair on my arm, as if it was a pet. Now, there isn't much hair. I don't have a lot of hair. I'm not that hairy. But the little bit that I do have, he would pet it when he was little. Well, that day, in the airplane, with my eyes closed, listening to probably an Om Namah Shivaya chant of some sort, could have also been listening to the Pratyabhanya Hridayam. That's very likely as well. Actually, quite likely. And as he's petting my forearm, I am just feeling so sentimental. And so I open my eyes and I look at him and he's smiling. And so I take off my headphones so that I can hear if he has something to say. And he says, "You know, Dad, all these years that we've gone to the ashram, I've never in any way needed to have personal contact with Gurmai. That has sometimes happened organically, but I've never needed it to happen. I can't explain it, but I really would love it if during this trip at some point I could sit with her and hold her hand and speak with her and just have some time with her one-on-one." And I knew that wasn't possible. In all our years going to the ashram, we knew that wasn't something that ever happened. He and I both had some spontaneous moments where we would have some experience with her, brief encounter of some sort, but any pre-scheduled or, time with her, it was a known thing that just doesn't happen. And we had also learned that prior to our arrival, the summer of 1998, when we first went to the ashram, there had been some years a ways back where there was this invitation that would happen at the end of the satsang, where everybody would get in a line in the center aisle and go up one by one and have what was called darshan. It was an ancient tradition that had been practiced for thousands and thousands of years. After the satsang, you would go up and have darshan, a little time with the guru, and then the next person would come up and have a little time with the guru. Guru Mai, we were told, had stopped that many years before we arrived in 98. And I always had the sense that it was very much in alignment with her message to all of us, which was to find the Satguru within. Don't look outside of yourself for that source of inspiration, that example of a being who's connected to their heart. Realize that you are that same heart essence. You are that divinity. The divinity is right here in your humanity. She emphasized this a lot. She would always say, please don't chase me around and believe that it's only within me. It's also within you. She would cite her teacher, Baba Muktananda, who had several quotes along these lines, one of which was, Shiva, and sometimes the word God would be used because it's, trying to help Western people understand the phrase. So it would tend to be the word God. So his phrase would tend to get transliterated from Sanskrit or Hindi to this: God dwells within you as you. Divinity is within you, expressing itself as you. So I knew in that moment, as he's lovingly petting my right forearm, that it just isn't going to happen for him. And I also was aware in that moment that I would ask around and see if maybe somehow it would be a possibility. So upon arrival, I started asking, staff and veteran people that, were there long before he and I had arrived in 98. And the answer always was what I already knew was, it's just not going to happen. She doesn't do darshan anymore after the satsangs. And she's really trying to reestablish a different culture where everyone is not so dependent and so outward focused on the guru, that they turn their attention within and find the guru within. So that summer, I explored all kinds of ways to try to see if it could happen for him. And no matter who I asked or how I tried to come up with some sort of creative possibility, it just was very clear that it wasn't going to happen. So now it's the final day. There's going to be a day-long event with Guru Mai in attendance with us in the big gathering hall that would fit probably, I don't know how many. I'm going to guess maybe, 700, 800, 900, maybe as many as 1,000 people. Big gathering hall. I might be way off in my estimate of that, but it was a big space, big space. And that day, which was our final day, the very next day we would be going back to the airport and flying home from the ashram. Alan had gotten there early, and so he was sitting way up front, about 3 or 4 or 5 rows from where Guru Mai would sit, in the very front of the room, way in the very front. And I had a favorite spot in the very back row of seats, right by a big crystal cluster. And I would sit in the chair right beside the big crystals. I called them my crystals. And I would sit there. It kind of became a known thing because most people didn't want to sit in the way back. They all wanted to sit up as close as possible. But I could feel her presence anywhere. I didn't need to be up close. I could feel her presence. which was the same presence that's within all of us. Alan and I had really received the invitation, but that summer a deep longing in him had come over him. So that final day during the gathering, all day long, sitting in the very back row, far, far away from Alan and far, far away from Gurmai physically, but right there intimately with them in my heart of being, I was calling to Gurmai inwardly, just in my awareness. I'm not saying it out loud, but all day long during the final day event that we were going to be able to be a part of, I just kept calling to her inwardly in the inner realm, in the heart. Gurmai, please. Alan, on this trip, would really love to have a chance to sit with you and hold your hand and have conversation with you, one-on-one time with you. If that is at all possible, it would be so lovely if that could happen for him. Gurmai, please, if that could happen for Alan, it would be so lovely for him. Please, Gurmai, please. Is there any way we're leaving tomorrow? Would there be any way that he could have some time with you and hold your hand and speak with you? And if not, please allow me to ever more surrender into that heart of being where we all find each other naturally and so fully. And please shower Alan with blessings if it's not to happen, that he too can turn his attention fully within the heart of being and let this not happening be a catalyst for both of us, please. And then I would pause, and then I could feel the call within me, just calling to her from the heart. And it would happen again. I would say, and Gurmai, please, if at all possible, from the very heart of being that I am, please, if Alan could have time with you and sit with you and hold your hand and have conversation with you one-on-one. It would be so lovely if that could happen for him, Gurmai, please. And if not, please let this be a catalyst for evermore surrendering into the heart of being for both him and I. Thank you so much. I'm getting a little sentimental as I'm sharing this. It's a little tender. Remembering the feelings of that day. And so the day event unfolds through the morning and lunch and into the afternoon. And then we're now where there's only a few more minutes left. We're going to be complete for the day. And Gurmai completed, and it was clear that we were done for the day. And what would always happen previously at this point, when she would be finished, one of the swamis would get on a microphone and say to all of us, okay, everybody, Gurmai is going to leave the gathering hall now. Please stay seated. Please don't get up and chase after her. Please just realize that you can connect to the heart of being within your own self. What you might believe is only within her is also within you. This is her invitation to all of us. Please stay seated and don't sit after her. Don't chase after her. So she would then, at this point, get up and leave. Well, none of that is happening. She's actually calling one of the swamis over, and they're having a conversation. You can see, it's way up there, more where Alan is, because I'm in the very back row, remember? So but I can still see what's going on. And she's having some sort of conversation with one of the swamis, and he has a very surprised look on his face. And then he gets on the microphone and he says, well, everyone, I'm very pleased to let you know that something is going to happen that hasn't happened here at the ashram for many, many, many years. And Gurumai has just let me know that she wants to invite all of you to come up for darshan with her if you like. I almost fainted. I was absolutely so deeply touched. Tears just streaming down my cheeks. Alan stands up, turns around, and is looking toward the back of the room where he knows that I am. And he sees me, and he puts up his hands in a gesture of, can you believe it? And he's got a big smile on his face. Like, what a wonderful surprise. And so then he notices that people are already in the center aisle starting to form a line. And so then he, goes and he gets in the line. And then now I notice that Gurumai's got a big grouping of feathers, many, many feathers that are all fanned out. And there's sort of like a area where it's wrapped with something where they're kind of tied together at the, stalk part, and the feathery part is all fanned out. Beautiful, fan of feathers would be a way to try to say it. And the first person then approached and then went down into full pranam. And in pranam, you go down on your hands and knees, and then you bow your forehead to the ground. And when you do that, your heart is higher than your head. In the pranam, it's not just some, unmeaningful particular physical position of the body. The whole point of it is to lower the mind and greet that being from your heart. So whenever you pranam to anyone, the whole invitation of it is to let go of the need to, control and manipulate with the mind, that part of us that I call the wanter and the problem solver mind, and greet that being from the heart. From heart to heart, we find each other in the heart. This is the lovely possibility of pranam. So one by one, people are in pranam. And then the feathers, this fan of feathers that she has, she puts it on their back and then lifts it up. And then they, their torso raises up. They're still on their knees. And their hands would go together in Namaste Mudra. And then they would get up and walk to the right. There was no conversation. And then the next person would pranam and the feathers would go on their back. And then they would come up with their hands at Namaste Mudra and they would walk over to the right. And one by one, this is what was happening. And after several people, witnessing this happen, I was like, oh, I guess that's what darshan is. Well, at least he'll be able to have that brief moment there with her. How wonderful. So I've just relaxed back into it. I'm just amazed at how lovely this is and how sweet. And then one by one, each person, the feathers on the back, and they move along. And there's never any conversation whatsoever. And it's about 3 or 4 people before it's going to be Alan's turn. And he turns around and again, and he looks at me and he's all excited. He's got a big smile on his face. He's been witnessing what's been going on, and he is not in any way needing it to be any more than that. He's so grateful. He's so happy. He doesn't have a look on his face of being disappointed. He's just so grateful and so excited. So then now it's his turn. He approaches, goes into the position of pranam, bows his head to the ground. The feathers go on his back. She lifts the feathers. His torso comes up. He's still on his knees. His hands are in Namaste Mudra. And then he stands up to then go to the right like everybody else. And as he gets up to walk away, she reaches her hand out to him. Oh. And Alan holds her hand. And she gestures for him to sit beside her, which he does. And he looks up at me and he's got this big smile on his face as he's holding Gurumai's hand. And they're having conversation. And I'm just sobbing and sobbing and sobbing in the back row. So grateful. It was such a beautiful moment for me of realizing she heard the call and there was a response. I felt so grateful that she had heard me calling to her and asking her, please, Gurmai, please could Alan sit with you and hold your hand and have conversation. And there it was occurring. And I'm so touched, the tears just streaming down my cheeks. Then all of a sudden, Alan very quickly stands up and runs toward the entryway door to the gathering hall. As soon as he's leaving, Gurmai reaches out for him. She doesn't want him to leave. He doesn't see that because, he's running as fast as he can toward the door, the exit door. And I'm wondering, what's going on? Why is he doing that? And then Gurmai has one of her assistants chase after him. You can tell she must have said, go get him. So then people continued the darshan, and they would go up and they would pranam, and she'd put the feathers on their back, and they would come up and they would walk to the right, and the next person, and the feathers on the back, and they would walk to the right. Well, after, maybe 10 minutes or something, I see Alan coming back in the entryway door to the hall, and he's with Gurmai's assistant, and she's holding his hand, and she's walking him back toward Gurmai's chair. I'm just in awe and wonder what is going on next. So she brings Alan right up there to Gurmai. Gurmai sees him and smiles and so happy to see him. She reaches her hand out again for him and he holds her hand again. I start crying again. He sits with her. They have more conversation. And the people continue the darshan, and she's doing the feathers on their back. And then they would get up and they would walk to the right and the next person. And she's still talking with Alan and holding his hand. And with her other hand, she's putting the feathers on their back as they're coming up one by one by one. And she's continuing to talk with Alan. And this goes on for quite a long time. And then after a very sustained amount of flow of this, he eventually, you could tell it had come to a natural completion, and he thanks her and walks up to where I was seated in the back and comes back to see me, and we have a big hug and we cry and we laugh and we sit there together in the back row as I sit by my crystal. We're the only ones, sitting back there because everybody else is in the darshan line. Well, this darshan went on for hours and hours, and then the word got out into the community beyond the ashram grounds, and people were finding out that Gurmai's having darshan. So even people that weren't in the event that we were all in together started showing up. So the darshan line would just keep getting filled up with more and more people. And it went on for, it must have been 4 or 5 hours. Well, toward the end of that, Alan had gone back and sat up front on his meditation cushion, just a few rows from where Gurmai is seated. And so I'm just sitting there in the back. And there's maybe about 10 people left. And I'm just so grateful to her. I'm so honored, so grateful. And in that moment, I could just feel her presence in my heart. And I could feel her letting me know when there is that pure of a call into the Shakti field that we're all connected together in, there will be a response. It's just the nature of the Shakti field. Whenever there is a call that's that pure from the heart, there's naturally a response within the Shakti field. It was all of that. I'm giving words to something that had no words, but that was the sentiment that I could feel from her in that moment in my heart center. Having received that communication from her, I realized I wanted to go up and thank her for what had happened. So I went and stood there with the remaining people. And then it was eventually my turn, and I approached and I went down in a full pranam on my hands and knees, my forehead to the ground. And the feathers came on my back quite forcefully. I was like, wow, that I didn't realize that it was that, to me it looked like she was doing it very softly on everyone's back, but when it was on my back, it was very forceful. And as soon as it hit my back, something opened, an opening in consciousness where there was only her and I. All of the other people were not in the realm that we were in together. We were in some sort of other realm, just her and I. And she was speaking to me in Sanskrit, and I could understand what she was saying, and she was thanking me. I had gone up there to thank her, and she was now thanking me in some sort of other dimension of consciousness. And it's impossible to put this into words, but it was just such a pure gratitude pouring from her, thanking me. And if I give it words, it was something like, thank you for being willing to be in this human life. I know how hard it can be to be here in this loka. These experiences in these human bodies are quite intense. And thank you so much for being willing. And she also communicated to me something that I didn't understand until many, many years later, something along the lines of, thanking me for being here, and that I would inherently end up being of service in some beneficial way. I didn't need to know what it was. It would naturally be revealed to me. And then I felt another impact of the feathers on my back, and another one, and another one, and another one, and another one. And I was kind of slowly coming back to my body from that other realm, and aware of myself in pranam on the ground, and the feathers just again and again and again on my back. Then it came to completion after several rounds of feather impact. The impact of a group of feathers turns out can be quite impactful. Yeah. Oh my goodness. So my torso raised up. I was still down on my knees, and my hands went together in Namaste Mudra. And right in that moment, I was now with my voice going to thank her. And right as the words were about to come out of my mouth, she looked at me with such pure eternity of absolute love and said to me, "You have a big heart." And I just started sobbing and sobbing. Even in this moment, I can still feel the energy of that. You have a big heart. And it just filleted me. And I started sobbing and sobbing, and I did the best I could to stand up without falling over, and moved out of the way to let the next person come in for their time with her. And then I went and sat with Alan, and we hugged, and he rubbed my back as I cried and cried and cried and cried. He comforted me as I was sobbing and sobbing at what had just happened. Then when I could finally, stop crying and blew my nose, I always would have a handkerchief in my right front pocket, blew my nose, and was, kind of coming to a more natural state without needing to cry. And he said, "Dad, she just kept whacking you on the back with those feathers." Over and over and over. I said, "Yeah, it was very powerful." So I went on to tell him how, we were in a different realm, a different loka, and she was with me and speaking to me in Sanskrit and thanking me for being willing to be here, and that she was so grateful that I was willing, and I was sharing with him all of that, and she knows that it can be hard to be here and all those things. And so we laughed, and there were still a few more people, because more people had come in. We're sitting there and just basking in the glow of the love that we are. We find each other in this love that is our essence, in the very heart of being that we all are. And so then I asked him, why did you suddenly get up and run out of the room? He said, oh, I was about to pee my pants. He said, I had to pee all afternoon. And, I was holding it. And then when the event came to an end, I would have then quickly went to the restroom. And then we had this whole experience. And so there I was sitting with Gurumai, so happy to be holding her hand. And let me tell you, he said, the energy that was pulsing from her into the palm of my hand and right up my arm and into my heart, it was no way to describe it in words what was happening. And then there just came a point where I knew if I didn't go to the restroom immediately, I was going to pee my pants. So that's when I got up and ran off. Then he said, when I came out of the restroom, Gurumai's assistant was there and she asked me to please come with her, and she brought me back into the gathering hall. And he said, as we walked back in, I saw everyone looking at me, and all of a sudden I felt so important, so special. He said, I could feel this energy coming over me of, yes, I am the special one. I'm the one that got to sit with Gurumai. And not only did I get to sit with her, but she sent her assistant to come and get me and sit with her again. Look at me. I am the special one. He said he was just overcome with this air of specialness. And as he approached closer and closer, he said it was like time slowed down. And the closer he got, he said all of a sudden, the energy emanating from her into the room was so pure and such absolute love that all of that need for specialness just vaporized. Couldn't even stay coalesced into a construct of the need for specialness. It just vaporized and it was gone. And it was so simple. All that remained, he said, is the absolute love that we are. That doesn't need to be special. It doesn't need to be important. Doesn't need to be validated, confirmed. Has no needs. Pure, eternal, absolute love that we are. And he said, then I sat back down with her and we had more conversation. And then after a while, I just wanted to come and hug you. So that's when I then got up and came and found you, and we hugged. And it was an amazing experience. And what was revealed to me that day, well, how could it in any way be summed up into one realization, because it was a life-changing event. I was just so grateful. I was so honored that she had heard the pure call of my heart and was willing to let Alan have that experience. And for everyone that was there that day, it was the only time I know of that ever happened. In the subsequent years when we were there, it never happened again. It only happened ever that one time that I know of. And all I know for sure, it will always come back to this. All I know for sure is that I love you all with all my heart. It's that simple.